Hello and welcome back to the Roker Rapport Xtra podcast. You're back with me again, I'm sorry to say, it's Graham. Someone said I was sounding a bit depressing last week and they were sick of hearing the depressing things. Well, I'm sick of watching depressing football, to be honest with you, but I thought I'd touch on obviously the week in past with Sunderland Football Club. Got Bristol City on Saturday, and that's the main reason I'm here, is to discuss that with my guest today, which is going to be Stanley from One Stream In Bristol. Essentially, I suppose the past week there's been a lot of talk about protest, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, how we should do it, how we should move forward. It's been a really difficult, but again, apathetic week from a Sunderland perspective. What is actually always quite interesting is to see how other teams' fans view us from the outside, because we must look like we're in complete freefall. We're coming on the back of another defeat, this time at home to Ipswich, which was, we lost the game with barely a whimper. This week we've got Bristol City, who've been playing really well. They're sixth in the league, far ahead of where we are, like far ahead. They've already beat us once this season. I've got to worry that they might do it again on Saturday. Today's got Stanley from One Stream In Bristol. How are you doing today, Stanley? You well?
I'm good. I'm certainly feeling better than most Sunderland fans, I can imagine, at the moment.
Yeah, I think everyone is. I think statistically we're the most depressing team to support in England at the moment.
And you live really far up north as well, so it just gets even worse, doesn't it?
I'll cut that bit out. So you've had a good season. Stanley, from what I can see. And I don't want to touch on something too much straight away. I think, the whole idea of this podcast is to preview the match on Saturday. We all know we've been pretty shite for the best part of however many years it's been. But Bristol City doing quite well. What have you been doing right this season?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, we sort of saw flashes of this sort of occasional brilliance and amazing performances last season, but then it all went to pot and we ended up sort of breaking our record losing run. I think part of it is that last season our main two players for the most part were Lee Tomlin and Tammy Abraham. And although we replaced Tammy Abraham's goals, I think, with Bobby Reid, we needed to replace Lee Tomlin's sort of lack of work rate, because as he went, we sold him to Cardiff and we needed sort of a team mentality, more of a sort of 11 men all playing for each other sort of ethos. And I think with Bobby Reid playing in the 9.5 or the 10, he works harder than anyone I've seen, anyone I can remember for Bristol City. And I think the disparity between Reid and Tomlin's output and work rate, I think, has been a major plus for the team this season. If we can carry on sort of working hard and doing the basics right, I think we can beat most teams, because we've got players like Patterson, Bryan, or Reid himself who can come out with the occasional bit of brilliance.
I think one thing I was really impressed with Bristol City, and it was early-ish on the season when you beat us 2-1 at the stadium, and there's not many teams that have impressed me this season, which sounds weird being second bottom of the league and imagine there's a lot, but I'm actually surprised at the lack of quality in this sort of league, to be honest with you. And it's even more frustrating the amount that we struggle in it. But I was really impressed with Bristol City's sort of team ethic. There was no super standout players. You just all seemed to know what you were doing, where you were at. And Bobby Reid, you touched on before, because he scored at the stadium. He looked quite handy. Was he a summer signing then, I take it?
No, he's been here for a long time, but he might as well have been. He was essentially a summer signing, because he's only just appeared on the scene, really. I mean, he's been a youth player, a City player all his life, since he was 12. And he's always shown brilliance. I mean, I used to watch him probably 3-4 years ago in the under-21 team. And every single game, he was a standout player. He would score free kicks, he would take penalties, he would run the game. But that was always as a playmaker, as an attacking midfielder. And when we first came up to the Championship, Reid sort of played fleetingly behind the striker or in a 10. But this season, because of Abraham going away and Tomlin basically not being in the plans, we needed a new striker, a new 9.5. And Lee Johnson thought about going out to Europe, and he looked at all these different options. And when he sort of put their stats into the big machine, the big algorithm sort of generator, he realised that Bobby Reid is probably fast enough, he's quick enough, agile enough, he's got enough stamina. And he thought, well, let's give him a shot. So he basically moved him to striker for the first time since his youth career. So he was a striker up until, I think, under 16s, moved to a centre mid playmaker. But this season, he's been a revelation up front. And he's got Famara Jeju, who didn't play, I don't think, in the Sunderland away game, because I think he might have been injured. We had Milan Djuric instead. But Bobby Reid and Famara Jeju, they worked really well together. But Reid with 12 goals in the league, 14 in all competitions, an absolute revelation. And he looks like he's been playing striker all along. It's really is quite peculiar. I think in terms of improvement over a small period, I think Reed certainly stands out as one that I can't think of anyone ever improving so rapidly in such a short space of time. I know he got the goal at the Stadium of Light, but it sounded like he did have a good performance that day alongside many other of our players.
Yeah, I think it was a good performance from Bristol's perspective. Obviously, it was during that period where I think we were realising how hard it was going to be. And I think one thing, like I said before, the team ethic from Bristol City's perspective, you could see there was a plan, an idea that the manager knew how they were going to play. And you could kind of see that. And sadly, we just couldn't handle that, which is really quite depressing from our perspective. But I guess the one standout player for me that I've known for a while, we were linked to him, I think, when Allardyce was here. And I think that's when he came on our radar. And obviously, he's an absolute giant at the back and he can stick them in from the corners. I think I have to mention like Eden Flint. How important is he to your team as a whole, despite the fact you have this team ethic? He is probably the standout individual from an outside perspective. How important is he?
I think he is quite important. I think he certainly, like you're right, he definitely does stand out to sort of the outsiders, because Bobby Reed sort of, even though he's got 12 goals, goes under the radar. And I think Flint grabs all the headlines, to be fair. I mean, someone quite key to Aidan Flint who won't be playing against Sunderland is Nathan Baker. And they form quite a formidable sort of partnership at the back. I haven't seen I think Jordan Hugill might be the only striker off the top of my head that's not been bullied into the ground by those two. They really are two absolute giants at the back. Flint, I mean, 6 goals in the league, which is exceptional. He's already matched his tally for last season, but he hasn't scored since Sheffield United in early December. So he might be due a goal. He's important. I think he was close to being sold in the summer, I think, as most people know, and he could have got sold in January as well. And we've got Bailey Wright, who's sort of, I don't know, I think some people would say that Aidan Flint and Bailey Wright are similar abilities. Aidan Flint's probably got more ability going forward and sort of scoring goals, but I think Bailey Wright, Aidan Flint still has the occasional bit of nonsense, the occasional bit of dodgy clearance or a dodgy header. But with Nathan Baker out, Aidan Flint's going to be absolutely crucial in the air at the back, and going forward in set pieces, he can get a goal from anywhere. He's so big,
and he's like, is he 6'5", 6'6"?
I mean, I remember the first time, I think when we signed him, it must have been an old FIFA game. I thought 6'4", that's good. But they were way off. He could be 6'7", 6'6.5". I mean, I've seen him play against Crouch this season and Ibrahimovic this season, and he looks as big. And the thing is, you get a lot of centre-backs nowadays that are 6'5", 6'6", but they're not in proportion. They're quite skinny. Yeah. Whereas Aidan Flint, if he was in a distance, you wouldn't know how tall he is. But as soon as he comes up to him, he's massive, huge broad shoulders, huge arms. He is a freak. It's stupid how many headers he wins in the air.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Bristol City, as much as they've been playing really good football this season, a lot of the headlines have been grabbed by the kind of hilarious goal gifts. But also, was it Eden Flint that was questioning where Guardiola got his Stony Island jacket from? Am I right in saying that?
You are right. Yeah, good spot. I mean, it's a team of characters, really. It's quite peculiar. They're all equally silly. They've all got their own individual sort of little things that they like. And yeah, that was true. At the end of the Man City game, all the players were shaking hands, and Guardiola went to Aidan Flint and shook his hand. And what I find amazing is this is probably Aidan Flint's only chance to have a quick chat, a 30-second conversation with arguably the best manager in the world at the moment. And he doesn't. He just says, "Where's your Stone Island badge?" on his shoulder. That was it, all he asked. And Pep didn't know what to say, sort of laughed it off, and Flint walked down. But the day after, or 2 days later, Marlon Pack posted on Instagram that Pep Guardiola had sent Aidan Flint a full Stone Island tracksuit to the training ground for Aidan Flint to wear. So, a team of characters. We love the gifts. I mean, we get a bit of stick when we don't score, but it doesn't matter. I think it's worth it. I mean, we've had some great, amazing goals and loads of retweets. And the media team are very good. They've done a very good job. And everyone's loving Bristol City at the moment. It's great to be sort of a team for the neutrals, because normally the neutrals sort of support the biggest team, and maybe it would mean more kids in Bristol wearing Bristol City tops instead of Arsenal or Man U, etc. Yeah,
and that's a struggle you have. Even when I was growing up in Sunderland, like the early 90s, well, I actually grew up in South Shields, but had my grandparents in Sunderland as well. So if anyone had a chance to support a different team, it was Man United or those lot up the road, because of how well they were doing. So, and there is a struggle with that, especially when you're in the Championship, because that's the future of the football club, isn't it, essentially? And just little things like funny gifts, as daft as it sounds, social media is a huge thing. And Sunderland, as a social media side, have got a lot of stuff wrong this season. I mean, people listening will know what I'm talking about, but they've got it right recently, and it seems like they've discovered GIFs only recently, but it kind of works. It's just a bit of a laugh, but the goal GIFs, I had to mention that. I know that's not related to football at all, but I watched one the other day with was it Joe Bryan, the one where he's wearing like the hat? Did they change them every week, or am I just like imagining that?
I think, I mean, because originally it was just sort of everyone had quite a serious one. It's quite chilled out, and then the players that scored more. So I think Reed and Flint were sort of early on were sort of the players scoring the most goals, and they stagnate. So after 2 viewings or 3 viewings of the same GIF, everyone's like, "Oh, this is boring, change it." And so they decided to really just rattle out some crazy ones. And I think most of the players, I mean, Joe Bryan has scored 5 goals in all competitions, and he's probably had 3 or 4 different ones. Patterson scored a fair few goals. I think they update them, and they get sillier and sillier. I think we've seen Flint brushing his teeth. We've seen Marlon Pack ironing a football shirt. They're great, and they're only going to get silly. I want sort of end of the season complete nonsensical GIFs that no one you can't even interpret them. They're that weird. That's the level I want it to get to.
And the thing is with stuff like that as well, people were probably listening thinking, "Oh, goal GIFs, I want to talk about the match and the football and stuff like that." But you know what? Like you talked before about characters in your team. You talk about characters, and that's such a huge thing that the team want to do stupid things like that, which is funny. You can't see people like Jack Rodwell doing it for us. I mean, imagine how ridiculous that would be. Imagining that someone like Jack Rodwell would do that for us. At least those guys want to be there, have a bit of a laugh, enjoy their day to day of going into training and being a professional footballer. On the flip side, we've got the opposite. We seem to have 15 to 20 players that just genuinely don't want to be here. I tell you what I always find really interesting, you spoke sort of really quite passionately and positively about Bristol City, and I'm noticing this a lot with a lot of fans that I'm speaking to, with the exception of maybe Hull. A lot of the fans I've spoken to, they do speak passionately. They are really pleased to go to the match on a Saturday. They are proud to support the team they support, and they're talking about people wearing Bristol City shirts in Bristol as opposed to Arsenal. And I've mentioned this a few times, and it makes me wonder from the outside perspective. I almost feel like people probably feel sorry for us because we must look just so dishevelled. What's the view of Sunderland from your perspective as a complete neutral, completely outside of the region?
I mean, you've always sort of flirted with relegation, haven't you, for the last, I don't know, probably 5, maybe even 6 seasons in the Premier League, and you always seem to somehow fluke it. You'd basically step by the skin of your teeth and beat Newcastle. That was a standard Sunderland season. I mean, I don't know. It just looks like you're in a pretty dire situation. All the media stuff with Rodwell and sort of him naturally wanting to be paid off as you would. I mean, it'd be interesting. You mentioned Hull. It'd be amazing. Apparently, this would be the first ever double relegation. So 2 teams getting 2 relegations back to back. I mean, Sunderland, I think you guys losing I didn't think you guys would keep hold of Graben, to be honest. I mean, he's obviously on a fair wedge. I didn't think you'd bring him back. I think you've brought in a couple of decent players, but I imagine we'll probably preview the game and the players more in detail. It just seems dark. It just seems a dark, dreary place, the Stadium of Light, as it's ironically called, I suppose, at the moment. I mean, You guys are getting not very good attendances. I mean, you went a calendar year, was it, without winning the home game?
We were just, one day off. One day off.
Wow. Well, congratulations. I'm sure you all threw a big party, didn't you? No, it seems dire. It seems dire. I'm not sure. I'll tell you what. So when I'm watching football, my mum walks in. She always gets a bit depressed for the team that loses. So if the team gets beaten 5-0, she's like, "Oh, that's a bit sad." And I'm sort of a little bit like that with Sunderland. Like, "Oh, it is a shame," but then it's the nature of football. Teams do have to get relegated. Teams do sort of fall short, and I don't know. I think with the sort of the money beast that's the Premier League, maybe part of me thinks, yeah, it's great that Premier League teams are getting paid ridiculous amounts are being sort of punished for their gluttony in a strange way. I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel sorry for the football fans, but for the club itself, I don't know. It's the nature of the game, I suppose.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and I mean, when it comes to Sunderland, it is almost like we're being punished for the stupid decisions that our chairman's made, if anything. I mean, the amount of money we've wasted. I could reel off just 5 players, and it's not even the beginning. I think there was something like at one point, maybe looking at January last year, we had, I think it was of the 30 signings we'd made or something like that, 3 of them we'd made a profit on. And it's not just that, it's the amount of loss you see. I mean, Danny Graham, 5 million, 30, 40 grand a week. Stephen Fletcher, 12 million. You look at a lot of the players and the amount of money that we spent and the quality that we got back. The recruitment is just so terrible. I mean, you look at Adam Matthews, for example, who was obviously at Bristol City, he was completely out of the team, 1.5 million, didn't play for the best part of 2 years, give or take, I think one Carling Cup game or something like that. And now he gets in the team every other week because the people we spent the best part of like 10, 11 million on and paid 50 grand a week didn't do anything and left on a free transfer. And Danny Graham, for example, we paid 5 million for him, 3 or 4 years ago. He's in League One now. So where is this scouting come from? Where is this recruitment and the plan behind it? I suppose changing managers doesn't help, and the choice of managers really doesn't help. But it annoys me as a Sunderland fan that we, at one point in this mad 6 seasons that we've had, couldn't have done what Bristol City have done, Sheffield United have done, and a few different teams of that ilk have done, and just built a bit of a team. We should surely be punching above where we are at the moment. I don't mean promotion. I mean at least 15th. I mean, I think at the worst case scenario, many of us thought 15th, 16th, maybe we'd flirt with mid-table, nowhere near promotion. But it just seems that these defeats are just never ending, and you think, well, it's got to stop at some point, but it just doesn't. It continues on. I don't even feel like Chris Coleman's managing to lift that sort of doom and gloom. Were you surprised that Coleman took the job at Sunderland?
I was, to be fair, but then you wonder how much the Welsh FA pays their manager. I don't know how much he was getting paid, but it might not have been an obscene amount to keep him there.
Not a great deal, apparently. Not a great deal, so he said.
Yeah, oh, well, there you go. Not a great deal. I was surprised when he got rid of Grayson, to be honest. I thought that was ludicrous. I expected you guys to be down there because Premier League a lot of the Premier League players that you have, they've never played in the Championship before, and it's 8 more games, and it is a much faster paced division than the Premier League. People talk about the Prem being quite hard, but you look at teams like Huddersfield, they wouldn't look out of place in the Championship with their pressing style. That kind of style is commonplace. A lot of teams do that, and if it's not that, it's kick it and run and hoofballs and way more aerial challenges than the Premier League. That's been shown. I think. I don't know. I don't value the Welsh job very highly because I don't see that as a big job. But maybe that's just because I'm English, and I don't know. It's a weird one. I think you guys should have kept Grayson. I think you should have been more patient. I mean, you talk about sort of the overturn of players. I think any team that comes down from the Premier League to the Championship, they can do it one of both ways. If they know they've got a group of players that can bounce straight back, fine. I don't think anyone would have backed Sunderland to bounce straight back. No offense to the Sunderland team, but no, I don't think no one in the right mind would. A team like Villa, maybe, look at a team like Villa, they probably should have bounced back first of all. They had the squad, but they didn't, and now they've waited their time. They've stagnated a little bit in the Championship, but they've slowly got better now. They've brought in the right players, brought in Championship players and go up. And now they're looking like they could go up. I think you should have done the same with Grayson as manager. You should have given him time. I know they've got a lot of players on big wages, but they would have slowly been sold off. And you look at fine, Graben goes back, and you look at Ndong being loaned out. Players like that will slowly go away. And then you let Grayson build a proper Championship team. And I thought it was weird that you got rid of him. And Coleman, I can't remember the last time he managed a club team and the last time he managed in the Championship. Surely there was a better option than him.
It's an interesting thought. I'll be honest. I've never heard. We haven't, from us doing the preview shows and in general, we've never had the opinion we should have kept Grayson. So I kind of want to have a bit of a chat about that, I guess, in a sense, because I'll be honest, we've never had that. A lot of people have either glazed over it or spoken about Coleman and how they were surprised that it went. But Grayson's record was no clean sheets, and he had 1 win in 17. So you can understand why he went. But I suppose what I want to ask is, because I was of the opposite opinion. I never thought Grayson was really the right guy, and I think that gradually came on. But you have more experience of the Championship than I do. That's the truth. I mean, maybe 10 years ago, yeah, but the league has changed. The football's changed. Where do you think we went wrong with Grayson? Do you think we would have gone further down, or do you think it would have improved? What could you see from the outside that Grayson had?
Well, it's tough. I mean, first of all, I fully understand the viewpoint of not hiring Grayson in the first place. That's fine, and I don't know who the other names were with the job. I just know that Grayson got it. Perhaps he didn't suit your sort of the players you had, because obviously when he was at Preston last season, it was a very hard working team, sort of similar to Bristol City now in some respects, that everyone's sort of doing their duty and doing it well. And maybe with sort of the various flair players that came down from the Prem, or players that wouldn't be used to the pace, maybe Grayson's sort of tactics and style wouldn't have suited that. But I just think you guys are second from bottom at the moment. you guys aren't really doing that much better. There isn't really a dead cat bounce. I mean, you're only 2 points off Barnsley outside the relegation spot, but I just don't think that Coleman, I don't see how Coleman could have improved it. Grayson knows the league better than Coleman. Grayson's been managing club football, at least in the last few years. I don't know. I found it a bit weird when he went. I just thought, as soon as you guys were bottom for that long, I just thought, well, you're going to be bottom for that long anyway. You may as well keep the manager around, because he'll have longer to have looked at the problem.
It's an interesting thought, to be fair. I mean, I think at the same time, you're right in what you're saying. I spoke about, I went to the match on Saturday. For context for yourself, obviously the listeners know, but I live in Glasgow, so me getting to the match recently has not been as frequent as I'd like it to be, but or too frequent if you prefer. But I was at the game on Saturday, and it did feel like nothing had improved from the. I mean, I went to quite a few games at the beginning of the season. I had a bit of a break, to be honest, because I needed it. I was going nuts. I hadn't had a break since '97, pretty much. I needed that break because I couldn't take it anymore. Always knew I'd go back, but I remember watching it, and I'll be honest, I went with my dad, and I said to my dad, I was like, my dad was like, oh, what's Coleman meant to do here? What's he meant to do? And I did say, I said, if that was Grayson standing there, you'd probably criticize him. You'd probably say, what can he do? I was like, Coleman, on paper, Coleman has done a better job. We've kept more clean sheets. We've won more games on paper. But realistically, we're still having those demoralizing defeats. We're still feeling like we're in like a constant circle of crisis. So I completely understand where you're coming from with that. Grayson, again, I'm coming from an opposite perspective. So it's for me to see that, I suppose, is probably surprising. But I do get where you're coming from with it. We haven't really moved from where we're from. Birmingham have picked up. The only team that really hasn't is probably Burton. Bolton, I thought they might drop after they lost Gary Medine, but they went and beat yourselves, I think, actually. That was kind of a surprising result. It's kind of odd because I suppose from an outside perspective, I'm really proud and pleased to have Coleman. He says the right things. I feel like he's going to get it right. But then when you look at the results, although we have picked up more wins, more results, we're still second bottom. We're not, in reality, we're no further forward. Like, do we just like Coleman as a personality more? Is that it? Does Grayson just seem like he was not the right man for the job? But I mean, yeah, there's more results from Coleman. Like on paper, there is more results from Coleman. So therefore, I do have faith in Coleman. But I'm trying to think from your perspective, from an outside point of view, we're still exactly where we're at. We haven't moved any further forward, really.
I think you've been a bit unlucky because sort of every team in the bottom six has sort of put a mini run together at some point. Like you look at Birmingham, they've won 3 of their last 5 and they smashed you guys 3-1. Bolton have won 3 of their last 5. Even Barnsley, teams are getting occasional wins. I don't know. I mean, I think it's tough. Obviously, you don't want to get relegated twice in a row, but sometimes you need to start fresh. And I think Sunderland have bought so many players that just haven't really had the impact. Big wages, aren't particularly fit, or aren't particularly suited to Championship football over the last few years. I just thought, let Grayson have his time. Let him clean up the dead rubber. Give him summer and January, because in January you can get rid of players as well. And I don't know. I mean, we'll wait and see. Like you said, Coleman has got more points per game. And, he's got a couple of good results. I know you guys, I think, was it Burton away? One of his first games, I'm pretty sure you guys won. But Grayson lost loads of games 2-1. It wasn't like you were getting smashed. I don't know. Sunderland fans, I'm sure, have seen know a lot more about the two managers and how they did. But from an outside perspective, they brought Grayson in, and I was just expecting Sunderland to be very near the bottom and slowly Grayson to start churning out 1-0 wins, or get rid of the lazy players and bring in a hard-working English core. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And with the nature of the game, I think managers get sacked if there's any sort of hint of relegation. It'd be interesting to see if how long Coleman lasts.
Yes, there's more results on paper. If you take just his reign, would probably be doing ever so slightly better, but not that much better. One of the, I don't know if I can say a success story, but I will say sort of, because he'd been out of the team for so long, and he's probably our best right back and probably one of our better left backs as well. But I did want to chat about Adam Matthews. He's actually been one of our better players this year. Of all of the players that we've got, of the 3 or 4 of them that have impressed, Adam Matthews has done quite well. What were your thoughts on Matthews at Bristol City? How did he do down there?
Well, he played 21 games for us all together, and the first sort of half of them, or third of them rather, was a loan spell. So we got him in loan on January. This is when Lee Johnson had come in already, I'm pretty sure, but either way, it doesn't matter. And he was outstanding. He was just ridiculously good. He was, I mean, when we signed him, we all watched sort of the clips of him at Celtic. We thought, okay, good, a fast attacking right back, but can actually defend. It's an upgrade on Mark Little. It's needed, and he was outstanding. I remember in the 6-0 demolition of of Bolton. He put in a wonderful cross, and he was getting assists, put them away, cleared ones off the line, and he was outstanding. And sort of him and Tomlin were two lonely stars, really, in the end of that season. Everyone was begging to sign them on again. And Tomlin, we signed on a transfer. We bought Tomlin from Bournemouth. Everyone was incredibly excited about that. One of the most promising signings Bristol City have made in recent years. And Adam Matthews, who got on loan for the season. And for whatever reason, neither of them decided to replicate the form at all. And Matthews just started off and just wasn't very good. Didn't seem to be trying very hard. Almost seemed lazy or unfit, lethargic. Was getting injured. When he did play, he was just woeful, and he just disappeared. Just disappeared for the rest of the season. And we went back to using Mark Little. It's quite weird. I mean, we've moved on. We bought a good right back at the start of this season, Eros Pisano, who's been injured unfortunately, but is coming back soon. And he's a real championship right back. It's interesting that Adam Matthews is playing for Sunderland. I know he scored an own goal the other day, but for him to be one of your better players, I mean, obviously he's had a sort of mini revival since he had that awful second loan spell with us.
I think it's been a case of him. I described, because obviously, again, living in Glasgow, I live with a lot of Celtic fans, and a lot of Celtic fans ask me about McGeady and also Adam Matthews as well. The thing with Matthews is, I think he's very much capable of like a 7 out of 10, and he had a really good game against Fulham at home when we broke our home duck. But he's never less than like a 6 out of 10, and he did score an own goal on Saturday, but it was kind of, I wouldn't lay the blame at him. Although he got like the last touch to it, I suppose it wasn't necessarily his fault, although he maybe could have done better. I think at the same time, it was what it was. Sometimes that kind of thing happens, unfortunately, especially at Sunderland, and especially when John O'Shea is involved. But I think with Matthews, he's always a 6 out of 10. But that's what I was meaning by success story. I can't say success story necessarily, because it's not really a success being average on a constant basis, but that's pretty much what he's been. Like consistently average, never really that poor, never really that great. And I think maybe he's benefited from the fact that although we don't have much quality in any position, we seem to have like a collection of right backs that are just absolutely shocking. And Adam Matthews just kind of isn't. But I heard a little bit about his second spell not being that great, because I think we all expected Matthews just to leave and just to go. And I thought Bristol City would be his destination. And the fact that you took him again kind of indicated that he did quite well the first time. I mean, he was the forgotten man. Don't get me wrong. Completely forgotten man at that point, because we signed him when we had Dick Advocaat, which is about 4 managers ago, which, isn't that long in Sunderland time. But it's pleased to see that you held him in a high regard, because I've got a lot of time for Adam Matthews. Of all the players that we have in the team, the people that don't care, and I'm not going to single anyone out, because I think it's a collective. There's a lot of people that you see that don't care. The one thing I will give to Matthews is that he generally always seems to put a shift in, and for being such a forgotten man that no one actually really cared about or even remembered that he existed, he could have quite easily just searched for a move, but he's knuckled down. He's done quite well.
Maybe that's because you're paying him an obscene amount, though. Still, who knows? Yeah, it's weird. It's quite strange, really, that you mention him as someone who, is consistent in his performance, because he didn't seem that with us, really. I mean, the first season he was always very good. In the second season, in the second loan rather, he was just not very, just woeful, really. So it's interesting that you single him out as one of the few players in Sunderland's team that gives a consistent performance every week. That's quite interesting. But we saw flashes of it, obviously, in the first loan, and I'm glad he's playing well. And I think if he can get to anywhere near his best that we saw that we all saw at Celtic, I think he'd definitely be he saw it Celtic, or even in the first loan with us, actually. You definitely got a top-class championship right-back.
Yeah, I very much feel like on form, he is a good championship right-back, or a good Scottish Premiership. I think a lot of my friends, obviously, PS Celtic fans, will talk about the time when he marked Messi out of the game, but everyone can have that really good game. He's obviously not that level, but I think, he's obviously capable of a very good performance, and also capable of having a relatively poor performance, which essentially is what the championship is made up of, I think. I think it depends who's more consistent throughout the season, seems to do well. You have certain players like, I think, Jordan Hugill. I watched this season, you mentioned him before. He looked head and shoulders above what I'd seen, and I thought, he's going to be Premiership quality, maybe not high end. And I think I wouldn't say it's proven, but he has gone to West Ham, and I expect him to do quite well. He has the size, and he seemed to be playing well every week. I think the Championship is full of players who maybe have 3 good games, 2 bad, and I think Adam Matthews fulfills that in a sense. But then again, I don't know, because some of them players seem to have 4 bad games and 1 good, so maybe we are League One level. What was obviously, I want to reflect on the game at the stadium. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Again, I was quite impressed. I was actually quite impressed by Bristol City. It doesn't surprise me that much that you're doing quite quite well in the league. It doesn't surprise me. I thought I was impressed. And there's not many teams that have impressed me at the stadium, despite the fact that most of them have beat us. There really hasn't been that much. I feel it's anyone can beat anyone league, and there's not much quality in there. But I thought Bristol City had a really good spine. I'm quite impressed by Lee Johnson. I think what Lee Johnson brings to Bristol City obviously makes them tick. He obviously has a really good atmosphere. We talked about characters before. Lee Johnson seems to be doing a very good job.
I think he is. He's certainly doing a very good job. I think that the thing now with modern football is any English manager under the age of 40 who wins a couple of games, suddenly they're sort of they get on the back pages and everyone talks about them. But I think Lee Johnson, those sort of back pages are merited. He said last season, I mean, when he took, first of all, start when he first came in. So 2 seasons ago, he came in January. We were barely above the relegation zone. We were playing okay. And I didn't think we were a threat of relegation, to be honest. I think most fans did and thought Cottrell was right to be sacked. But Lee Johnson came in and changed to sort of a standard 4-4-2. Was before we were playing 3 at the back, and we had sort of players like Codger, Tomlin, and we were just beating teams. We were comfortable in staying up easy. The next season, we brought in Tammy Abraham to replace Codger. Everyone was very excited, and he proved as good, or if not better than Codger. But it was just weird. I think he was overcoaching. Lee Johnson said as much in sort of the end of season recap interviews. He said that he felt he was overcoaching the team and needed to simplify a bit more. I think he was sort of making too many subs or changing the team. So winning, for instance, we won away at. I remember we drew away at Newcastle 2-2, and Aaron Wilbraham, our 38-year-old striker, started, and he started him again when maybe he should have rested him, or little things like that, just, overcomplicating stuff. I think coming into this season, he learnt a lot. We had the worst ever losing streak last season. And I think Johnson just thought, let's go back to basics, keep it simple. Let's be a hard-working team. Let's get rid of people like Tomlin, put in people like Bobby Reid, and everyone worked together. And I think he's really good at creating little overloads around the pitch, Lee Johnson. I think that we've got wingers that are able to come inside. Everyone's comfortable on the ball. Even the centre-backs and full-backs are fine on the ball. I think probably the only one would be Frankie Fielding, our keeper, who's probably not comfortable sort of playing it out or playing switches. I think that everyone loves Lee Johnson at the moment. He's hot property. I mean, all these little niche sort of phrases, all the little 1% margins that he loves, like measuring the grass or using drones or big TV screens for analytical stuff. No one heard about that last season when we were on this terrible streak, and everyone was questioning his little mannerisms and little tactical things. And he's made some predictions. So he said that he'd like to be in the Europa League in 5 years. He said that slightly off the cuff, and that was just before our terrible season, so everyone slated him for that. He said Bobby Reid, if he can get on the end of chances, he'll be a £5 million player. Everyone slated him for that. Bobby Reid now looks like he's more than a £5 player. Joe Bryan, he made predictions about Premier League left-back, and now Joe Bryan's being linked with Premier League clubs. I think thank God that we actually gave a manager time, which is so rare in the Football League nowadays. We gave Lee Johnson time to build his idea, build his team, and now we're seeing the fruit of all his labours, really. And like you said, we've got a hard-working team that have flashes of brilliance with a really impressive spine.
When you explain it in that way, it does bring back to me why you had the opinion that you had on Grayson. It really genuinely does. And for me to sit here and say, no, I didn't like Grayson would be true. And for me to say I like Coleman would also be true. But I think when you've lived in that experience that you've had, the only experience I've had is changing managers as soon as it's gone to shit. That I don't think Grayson was the right choice. But I can understand now why you come to that viewpoint, because you've mentioned 2 players there. Before we talked about Aidan Flint, and we also talked about Joe Bryan, and I knew those players because they were players that Sunderland, when we were like in the Premiership under Allardyce, were linked to. So I've kept a kind of close eye on them, and I know that Joe Bryan's been linked to Everton now as well, like before Allardyce was there, actually, funnily enough. And you can kind of understand why. I think when I seen them at the Stadium Light, I was like, I could see them fitting into low-end Premiership quite easily. And is that because they've had the same manager that they trust, that they like, that they've learned to love in a sense? So maybe having that kind of continuity, that working on maybe your weaknesses, maybe working on your strengths, getting better at what you do, having one manager, as opposed to whereas you look at Sunderland, where we've had loads of different managers, loads of different signings. Almost every manager's had to deal with the last manager's signings, and we've been changing manager quite frequently. I mean, this year it was 6 months. We had Moyes for 1 season last season. I hate mentioning that guy's name, but nonetheless. But then before that, you had obviously Allardyce, and that wasn't our fault. But if you look through Moyes' team, like Grayson had to deal with Undong. Grayson had to deal with Dillaborgi at the start of the season. If you look at Coleman, he's had to deal with McGeady, which is obviously a Grayson signing. If you look at sort of David Moyes, he had to deal with Kone. He had to deal with Kirchhoff's injury problems, which was Allardyce's signings. Each manager knows what they want and how to deal with these certain players. But if they change that often, you're left with a bunch of players that don't know whether they're coming or going and what the plan is, and they're changing it so often. It's quite easy to understand maybe why they themselves get as apathetic as we are feeling right now. It just, maybe, well, I'm saying maybe, I know this is a fact, like longevity is obviously the thing moving forward that we need to keep. And it's actually quite depressing to hear someone happy about football, because I don't remember how that feels, if I'm honest with you. And people always have a go at me. I think it's a few people said, I'm sick of hearing about him being depressed. But like, fair enough. Like, I feel the same way. I don't want to be unhappy about Sunderland. Far from it. I want to be happy and proud, and I want to go into my workplace and say, hey, I'm a Sunderland fan. Like, that's me. That's the team I support. That's who I'm proud of. But I just don't at the moment. And it just seems like we're such a mess. And I spoke to a Sheffield United fan, or a Sheffield United journalist, should I say, James Shield, a few weeks ago before a game. I've spoken to yourself today. Very, very rarely have I heard a fan in the Championship say they're unhappy to support their team like I am with Sunderland. Like, I think maybe with the exception of the Hull fan that I had on, but I think Hull have their undocumented problems. There's a question I always ask, and it's funny because I will come to it, but I always ask, which players would you take from Sunderland? And me and the guy who edits this, he always has a laugh. He says, whenever you ask that question, which players would you take from Sunderland, there's always this pause of, and on the flip side, you hear like yourself, for example, today, Stanley, like if I ask you what players should Sunderland watch out for, I bet you could reel off 5 players quite easily. I couldn't reel off 2. And how depressing is that? Do you know what I mean? We shouldn't be where we're at. But I will ask the question. You've mentioned a few players, but on Saturday, based on recent form, I mean, you've got good recent form. Take out that Bolton game, you've had really good recent form. Those games against Man City, I was fully in the Bristol City camp. I thought he played really, really well. I think it was really impressive. But which players do you think we should watch out for? I know we've touched on a few, but maybe give me a few players that you think will be match winners on Saturday.
I mean, it's interesting, this perception that Bristol City are on outstanding form, really, because out of the top 15 in the Championship, only Leeds have a worse record. I mean, you guys have been better than us over our last 6 games, by the way. Sunderland have got 2 wins from their last 6. Bristol City have only got 1. So in terms of us being on outstanding form, playing well, sure, but outstanding form in the league, not particularly. I mean, it's hard, really, because we've had so many weird games recently. We've had sort of games where we've lost 5-0, games where we've had red cards, games where the opposition has had red cards, games in the cup. We haven't really got back to the league fully until probably now. In terms of players to look out for, I think ones that they don't. So I'll say Joe Bryan at left back. He should be starting at left back. We've seen him at left mid, but I think because our centre back Nathan Baker's will be playing at left back. He's someone who has been linked fleetingly with many Premier League clubs like West Ham, Everton, Newcastle have all been linked with him. He's very good sort of going forward. He's got the occasional screamer, which I'm sure if you followed our Carabao Cup exploits, you would have seen. They've got a new loanee called Ryan Kent from Liverpool. He's quite a sort of a flair winger. I'm still not sure about him, about how good he is and whether he's going to cut it for the rest of the season. But he's certainly fast, and he's got a nutmeg or 2 in him. He played for Barnsley last season, did very well. But I mean, this season we've got to talk about Bobby Reid. He's our top scorer, 12 goals in the league, 14 nil competitions. I mean, Sunderland fans want to see, Sunderland fans would dream for a player like Bobby Reid in the Sunderland team, someone who simply doesn't stop working. I know if he's a consummate pro, Reid. It doesn't stop running. He presses. He's unselfish. And with him and Famara Jeju, who's his target man, teammate, who should be playing together, you presume, on Saturday, we've got 2 very selfless players. Bobby Reid is happy to do all the running. Famara Jeju is happy to win all the headers and hold the ball up. And those 2 love each other because they know that that the yin and yang, they work well so together and they bounce off each other. So keep an eye out for Reid and Jeju, our strikers. Kent's a flair player. Brian's our probably our star defender, our star fullback. I mean, like you said, I could and I have rattled off 5 players. I mean, Jamie Patterson might be playing. He's great on both feet. I don't know. I could mention the whole team. I if I was a Sunderland fan, like you said, I'd be struggling to name anyone.
Yeah, and I think that we've got to that point for, I think, the first sort of 5 or so weeks that we did this podcast. Yeah, you had quite a few people that went, I take Graben. And the weird thing was, with Lewis Graben, he was total Marmite with Sunderland fans, complete Marmite, believe it or not. Graben I was a fan of Graben. His Peter scored goals, and he did that. Other people didn't like how lazy he he was. But I will ask, if you were to take any player from Sunderland, is there anyone that you would take?
Anyone will do. I'm looking. To be fair, you talked about people having a big pause when you asked them. You asked me this 3 minutes ago, and I basically had one big pause all the way through. Then, I mean, you've got quite a few youngsters that I think are quite exciting. I've seen that Joel Asoro play a couple of times, and he seems okay. I know you got him from a Swedish team, and we've had a few Swedish strikers that haven't quite worked out. I mean, if Duncan Watmore was still, when's he going to retire? He's had 2 woeful injuries. I mean, he's clock sticking, isn't he? He's playing so long. I would have him. And the weird one, I got to say, I paid reasonably close attention to French football. And when you signed Didier Ndong, I couldn't believe that he'd gone to Sunderland, to be honest. Yeah. I thought that, there you go, that is exactly who Sunderland need, a box-to-box centre mid that can shoot from anywhere. He's hardworking, he runs around. I know he costs you 14 million, but I thought, there you go, that's a great signing. So the fact that he's sort of just, you guys are dancing on the streets that he's gone to Watford, absolutely bemuses me, to be honest. So go on, I'll have him as well.
Yeah, and Dong was a weird one. And Dong, we didn't have any standout players last year, give or take Jermaine Defoe, Jordan Pickford. But Ndong was probably the third well-liked after that one. But he was infuriating in possession. He would win the ball and then give it away, which basically made him pointless. But yeah, I don't think anyone's too disappointed he's went to Watford. But I think there is a player there. Don't get me wrong. I do think there is a player there. I don't know where, somewhere in there, but there's definitely a player in there. But maybe I think this season, the big thing with Ndong was I think maybe his head may have been turned. He might have just gone, this is not how I want my career to go. I'm 22 years old. I want to have a good career in the Premiership. That's why I came to Sunderland. Because when he came to us, I wouldn't say we were on the up, but people kind of forget how successful that January to May was under Allardyce. We lost 3 games in 15, and that was like Leicester, Man City, West Ham. He came in under David Moyes, which is fair enough, but he came in when we weren't at the ebb that we were. We still wouldn't have expected to go straight down. It was still around that kind of time where we hadn't started too well, but we were sort of used to that. So maybe his head was just turned. And, I think with Sunderland fans, we've kind of had enough of that. We've had enough of that. You either want to be here or you don't. And I think Ndong very much was in the realm of, I don't want to be here. Well, I think Coleman said as much. Chris Coleman said he didn't want to be here anymore. But I think Ndong could do well. I
think what is quite interesting, I mean, you've talked sort of quite a lot about the quick turnover of players and the quick sort of changing of managers and how that affects having to get rid of the dead wood. I mean, you look at a team like Swansea in the Prem, who've probably arguably had a similar, maybe not as extreme as you guys, but a similar turnover of managers. And you can add in Watford, actually, to be fair. To some extent with how Watford are going to play their football. And with Swansea, you certainly know how they're going to play their football. But with Sunderland, it's a case of, well, let's just get in another manager and let's hope they figure out how they're going to keep us up. And at least with Swansea, if a Swansea manager buys someone and then leaves or gets sacked or whatever, they're going to have players that can fit a quick passing game and a possession-based game. And all right, Carvajal's probably gone a bit slightly more gung-ho than most Swansea managers recent times, but at least he's got the players that fit that mould. Because with the Sunderland team, Grayson can bring in anyone, or Moyes could have brought in anyone, because there's no blueprint to how Sunderland play. There's no sort of general formation or general sort of tactical ideology that sort of has stuck with Sunderland. And I think that with Grayson, I thought Grayson would be perfect, because it'd be, let's change it from a team trying to avoid relegation. You've gone down now. Let's just change it to a team that works hard for everyone. And I think I don't really know what Coleman's. I mean, have you seen a difference? Is there a particular way that a Coleman team plays? Do you know what a Coleman Sunderland team looks like after a dozen games?
Yes and no. I think he obviously likes his 3 centre-halves, kind of 5 at the back thing, but I don't think that works. I think the difference with Coleman and Grayson was Grayson, we could score. He'd never keep a clean sheet. Under Coleman, we can keep more clean sheets, but we can't really score goals. Whether that's losing Graben or not, I don't know, but Graben didn't score that many under Coleman either, to be honest. So yes and no in a sense. I would like to think that with the signings of Fletcher, the young boy from Liverpool, I think it's pronounced Ajaria, I think is a correct pronunciation, and obviously he brought in Lee Camp and Kazenga Lawar. I would like to think that we might see more of it with, some of his own players, but I suppose to answer your question, I'm a bit and ahhing, aren't I? So I guess that means no.
I think he signed some. I mean, obviously, I didn't think you guys would keep Graben, but when I saw you guys signed Fletcher and Ajaria, I think there's a good attacking players. It'd be interesting to see how they fit into the team. I don't think Fletcher will get anywhere near the amount of goals that Graben did, but he'll certainly work harder, and I think he's got sort of more top end speed, and he's probably slightly better holding the ball up. I think, those two signings would I mean, I don't know if it's possible to get excited as a Sunderland fan, but they'd sort of,
not right now.
Yeah, they'd get you slightly closer to a smile, if not make you smile.
Yeah, I mean, I think the game on Saturday we talk about it because it's a 2-0 defeat and it was done by half time, so it's quite easy to write that game off and say like it was rubbish. But the first 20 to 30 minutes we were actually all right, and a lot of that play came through Fletcher holding the ball up really well, looking quite in the game, and playing in the likes of Asoro and Ajaria as well. And the faded second half, but I think it's very easy to wilt and fade in the atmosphere that is the Stadium of Light at the moment when you 2-0 down due to defensive mistakes. And sometimes that's the problem. Like defensively, we can concede 4 goals and we can completely collapse under Coleman, or we can seem to keep a clean sheet. But then sometimes we'll score, but sometimes we don't. Like we've won a lot of games. Well, not a lot. We've won a few games 1-0. And I think that's Coleman's idea going forward. But I would like to think we could, with his own players, with a big man up front. I mean, Fletcher's huge. I didn't realize how big he was. He's like 6'5". He's massive, and he's built as well. He's not a skinny boy. He seems to be doing all right. Ajaria was okay. He faded a little bit as expected, but I think it looked a little bit more like a Coleman team for the first half an hour. But then for the other 60 minutes, I don't know what the hell that was. And I'd be lying if I said that half an hour makes me positive going into Bristol City, because I honestly don't see anything but a defeat. And I feel like that every blooming week, and it's horrible. Like I hate doing that. And all due respect to every team in the Championship, I'm sick of saying I'm worried about Burton and I'm worried about Bristol City and I'm worried about Ipswich. Like Sunderland have potential to be not worried at the very least about teams like that, and we should be competing more than that. And I was hoping that Coleman would give us a bit more of an identity, but yeah, I'm yet to find it, if I'm honest.
It's interesting, really. I mean, you normally expect some kind of dead black cat bounce perhaps when Coleman came in, but I know you guys beat Burton, but you guys are still in the bottom 2, and the result that really surprised me was when you guys lost 3-1 to Birmingham. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I know they're on sort of a crazy run of form, or a decent run of form, Birmingham, but with Steve Cottrell there, we thought that Bristol City fans looking from the outside thought they were done. We thought they were already relegated. I mean, he was already complaining. He was having arguments with fans. They were losing countless games. And then you guys go to St Andrews and get pasted 3-1. I mean, I don't know what I'd be thinking if I was a Sunderland fan, seeing Chris Coleman joining Sunderland, having a January transfer window to, because let's be honest, getting Graben and Ndong off the books would have been a huge amount of wages freed up.
Yeah.
And he's brought in Fletcher and Ajaria, and well, I don't know. I mean, you've lost your last 2 games. I certainly wouldn't be very positive. But then it sounds like no one is. If
the annoying thing is, one win pulled us out of that kind of stronghold that the relegation zone seems to like continuously have on us, in no matter which division we're in. But yeah, Birmingham was terrible, and Kone had came back in that game, and Coleman had talked of Kone's attitude, which is questionable for want of a better word maybe. But Kone came back that game, and we were 3-0 down in like the 50th minute. They pasted us. And the thing is, you might look at that result as well. They drew 1-1 against us, I think, on like the 23rd of December, something like that, around Christmas time. And they were the better side, and they were bottom of the league at that point. And they had 10, when they went down to 10 men, then we kind of had a bit more possession. But I think when they had 11 men, they were far the better side. And Barnsley at home, Barnsley, I think, have won 1 in 15. That's against us. And they were far and wide the better side. Nottingham Forest, the game that we won, they had 24, 25 shots. We had 1. So you could say we defended well. You could say we were lucky. You don't know. Yeah, it's not been too great at the moment. I mean, we beat Hull, but is that any great feat?
I mean, you mentioned Barnsley. I mean, maybe something to give Sunderland fans a bit of hope would be the fact that Paul Hackingbottom's gone to Leeds. I mean, sort of the only thing look, I've just got the table here, sort of 17th to 24th. I think Burton, I know they're only 1 point behind you, but I think they're gone. I think the only thing really you've got to hope is that Hull just carry on being terrible, and that Barnsley's loss of Hackingbottom, because I know they were going for the Lincoln manager and he turned them down, so God knows what that says about the state of Barnsley. I know they've suddenly fallen into money with a new owner, but it doesn't seem like they actually spent any of it in January. I think you just got to hope that Barnsley and Hull keep up their terribleness, and maybe Ajaria and Fletcher can sort of win games on their own, really. But I don't know. Yeah. I'd have very little hope for any team down there. But like I said, 1 win and suddenly you're out there and it's all hunky-dory.
Such is life. If only it was that easy. But one thing I always like to end on, obviously, is the obvious, a prediction for the game. What's your thoughts? And you can be as harsh as you want. I'm expecting it.
Well, I mean, we've got the fewest goals in the top six. So in terms of a route, I mean, I don't know if that means that we're due one or whether we're not going to get one. I think Famara Jeju's probably back to full fitness now, you'd say, and he's got a better goal per minute ratio than Bobby Reid, our top scorer. So it'd be nice to see him get another goal like he did against QPR. I think, I mean, I've got to predict a win, I think, because any sane Bristol City fan would do, and probably any sane Sunderland fan would do. So I'll go with a comfortable Bristol City win with Aidan Flint, Bobby Reid and Jeju on the score. I'm not going to give a score because I never get them right. So I'll just go comfortable Bristol City win. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you on that. I think I honestly don't see us getting anything out of Saturday. I hope I'm wrong, but it's interesting that you said lowest scorers in the league. So I'll go with 2-0, I think, which is horrible to say. I should never go against my own team, but nonetheless, that's what I'm going for. I'm going for 2-0 and hoping I'm going to be surprised. And Saturday is the start of a revival. But as you can hear, I don't have much conviction in that. But thanks for coming on, Stanley. Do you want to give a wee plug for obviously the podcast and the site that you're part of?
Yeah, if Sunderland fans want to support a team that's not on a hideous downward spiral, they can follow One Stream In Bristol at OSIB podcast on Twitter. Yeah, I mean we're gonna obviously have an episode coming out this Sunday, and it'll be about the Sunderland game, and I'll be interviewing a Sunderland fan outside of Ashton Gate. So if for whatever reason Sunderland fans want to hear that sort of 5 minutes of their opinions, they can listen via iTunes. But maybe I'll send it to you, and you can forward it to whoever wants to hear more demoralising viewpoints from Sunderland fans.
We can do that. But thanks for coming on very much, Stanley. I always say this at the end of the preview podcast because it's become a thing I didn't realise. But I hope you have a horrible Saturday. But I wish you the rest of the luck for the rest of the season. And thanks very much for coming on, chap. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that's end of episode 10, I think, something like that. Interesting to hear someone being positive again. I kind of hark for the days when we could speak to a Hull fan sometimes when I say that. Because at the end of the day, Hull were as depressed as we were, and we actually went and won that game. But I don't really know what to say at this point. I want to say something really positive, and I don't know if I can, so I think I'll just leave it as that. But I really hope we can put a performance on Saturday. We've got some new faces in who, let's be honest, they were quite good for half an hour on Saturday. Maybe with, that baptism of fire they had against Ipswich, they can really understand the gravity of the situation that we're in and go and perform at Bristol City. The pressure's off. We're away from the Stadium of Light. We all know that we struggled there. Maybe we win more games away than we do at home. How do I summarise that? I hope you have a great Saturday. I hope everyone really hears me being a little bit happier in the coming weeks, because I'm getting a little bit sick of being depressed, a little bit sick of being unhappy speaking about something, but it's difficult. I think it'll be an interesting week. Tensions are getting to the point where I think people are needing to see change from the board and from what's happening. And I think there's conversations that are being had across the fan base about what we can do to change that. And me personally, not speaking on behalf of anyone, Roker Rapport, or anyone else but myself, I feel that needs to happen. I think, the anger that I seen on Saturday in the defeat to Ipswich was way too much between each other. I think the anger needs to be directed at the person that's creating that anger, which I think we all know where it comes from. But again, that's me speaking in my own terms. But I hope it gets better. I love Sunderland, that's the problem. I'm sure you do as well. I hope that we love them just as much on Saturday and we forget just for 90 minutes the mess that we're in and hopefully continue to improve. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. You'll hear me before the Brentford game. I guess keep the faith is where we're at. Thanks.